So let's go in. We all are aware that in the manufacturing sectors, there are a lot of challenges today. So we're not talking only about the global competition, the panda bear on the one hand, the US companies on the other hand. We are talking about the fact that the SMEs are not going into the digital transformation as expected. Yeah, they are much slower than expected and much slower than the big horses in the business. The big horses all have their innovation teams. SMEs really struggle to get access to innovation, to implement innovation. But that's more. There's always issues of data security, data safety. There's the issues of regulations governing more and more also the manufacturing sector, like the Digital Supply Chain Act, the Governance Act, the AI Act, and so on and so on. And there's also the CO2 requirement, reporting requirement, which is a big burden also for SMEs. We said this is not only a challenge, this is not only something which is stopping the sector, which is an important contributor to our wealth, with between 17 and 25% of the national products in Europe. It's also a potential for new business models. And as I said, on two different sides. On the one side, business model for orchestrating organizations like EIT Manufacturing wants to be an organization that runs a federator in the future. And also for the participants in the ecosystem, for people that provide data and people that consume data. And you have to imagine the digital transformation in industry produces a lot of data. And those data are not used. They are there. And people can use the data to gain revenues by selling them, providing them, or people can gain other advantages by going into higher competitiveness, for example, by using the data that exists. So we have to set up a data sharing environment in manufacturing, and this is the goal. And there's an overview how it can produce values on different levels, but I really don't want to go into the detail. Show you some use cases which we are working on so that we can illustrate how it benefits. And if you look at the entire manufacturing environment at manufacturing companies, then you see that data sharing will benefit many, many different sectors or sub-processes of the entire manufacturing processes. So we can look at quality management, where data sharing brings benefits and economic values. We can look at process optimization, automation activities which produce data and which let consume data. We can look at maintenance like predictive maintenance, or we can look at the entire production planning process, even involving humans and benefiting from data sharing, which we call human centricity in modern terms. So let's talk about use cases. Why should SMEs share data? Not only the big corporates. Intelligent camera systems today do automated inspections during the manufacturing, surface inspection, weld seam inspection, presence control, counting of objects, label recognition, and so on and so on. So this is done in one process in one company. But if something goes wrong, if there is a kind of scrap production, then maybe this deals with the machine. So if the scrap production happens in one company, and we get an information that maybe the machine was not maintained early enough, and share this information with the machine producer or with other companies using the same machine, then they all can prevent scrap production. And by preventing scrap production, we reduce the cost of scrap. We reduce burden in the environment. So there are many benefits that we can count. Reduction of scrap production, cost and time savings. These are benefits that can have a business value and economic value, a euro value assigned to. And there are more. Predictive maintenance, I mentioned. You use AI to see what happens with one machine. You extract 200 different data from sensors, from machine. Ground is shaking and it's influencing the quality of the production and so on and so on. And you have knowledge why in your environment something goes wrong. But if you share this knowledge with the same machines in other environments, then everybody gets smarter. And if everybody gets smarter, you have, let's say, this value increasement data gets turned into information, and information gets turned into knowledge just by sharing the data. This again has economic benefits like cost and time savings, reduction of downtimes, optimization of shifts, again, reduction of scrap production, and so on and so on. Again, exact euro values that you can assign to the different use cases. And there's more. Today we use exoskeletons or other technologies to measure the burden of people at the machines or involved in some manufacturing processes. And as a result of measuring how workers are burdened, you come to shift optimization. You have to burden them less. And if they are burdened less, then they have less sick days. You have less cost due to sick days in the organization. You can optimize the shift, and you can optimize the production planning, with the shift optimization. So healthier people, more efficient production, even maybe more output with the same use of resources. And these are again values that you produce. Not only cost and time savings, but higher output or higher outcome. Now in the manufacturing, and not only in the manufacturing, we are burdened with CO2 reporting. We measure scope 1, scope 2, scope 3. And especially when we measure scope 3, we have to get data. What is the CO2 emission if we ship 1 ton of materials from Singapore to Dortmund? Put it on the ship to Rotterdam, put it on the train to Dortmund. This has to be reported. I can go to the internet and find data, but are the data reliable? Are they true? Are they fake? Is this misinformation? Are they old? Are they measured with a ship which had a container, was a container ship with a diesel motor, diesel engines? Or is this measured with a ship that has hydrogen motor? Which is a totally different footprint. By sharing this data in a viable, trustable environment, like based on Gaia-X values, you have the security that the data are not fake, and you're more efficient in reporting the data. And we have also the interoperability advantages with other data spaces. Manufacturing and energy are very closely related. And companies, especially SMEs, have the advantage to manage their energy data for building service optimization. Do the optimization of your operations. Peak load management. Buy the energy then when the prices are relatively low. Energy wastage control. All benefits that you can measure. So with other words, we create a lot of value for providers, for consumers, but this requires trustworthiness, security, sovereignty, interoperability, transparency, and so on and so on. I can list all the Gaia-X value. So with other words, if I build something on the Gaia-X trust framework and establish an entity which is independent from consumers and providers, which manages the data sharing independently on the basis of this trusted framework, then we create value for the entities that participate in the data sharing. But there's also a business opportunity for this federator, for this orchestrating entity, which we have to take into consideration. So with other words, we need partners in the manufacturing data ecosystem. We need relevant manufacturing data, a trusted infrastructure, and then we are able to unlock the potential of data-driven business models. And what I did when I developed the business model for a federator, for an orchestrating entity, I went to many conferences. I interviewed many companies. And we saw that there are multiple stakeholders interested. Not only manufacturing companies, there are telecom companies interested in data sharing. There are companies like Software AG and other service providers interested in data sharing. There are governmental agencies, there are certifiers, there are lobbying organizations like VDMA and so on, multiple stakeholders. And there are many benefits, so I can see what is the relationship in terms of information flow, service flow, quality flow, money flow, subsidy flow between a consumer of data and a federator and a provider of data and a federator. I can measure all these values, and I did this exercise. We have a big list of such graphics. If you summarize this, then I come to a multi-sided business model. So with other words, if you put the federator into the middle, the federator can have many, many business relationships to different providers of data and to different consumers of data. And we're talking about business models like federator to business to consumer, federator to government, federator to NGOs, and so on and so on. Even academia can benefit, because academia is keen to get access to data used in the market. Yeah, they don't have the connection to the industry, or they pay for it. Yeah, now we can help academia to share data and to have the academic research even more focused. So many, many benefits, and this is why we build now also the federator. You see, on the one hand, we have on Gaia-X trusted framework, at the end, the catalog services, where providers that are accredited, certified, can publish their data, consumers can request. Thomas will talk about the secure algorithm, how data sharing can be established, but there's a business component for the federator. Federator can be open to memberships, like EIT Manufacturing can implement it by running a big ecosystem. Federator can be open for other monetization means, like transaction fees, service fees, and so on and so on. And this concludes, let's say, the first part of the presentation with the lessons learned.
Quick clarification.
Yeah.
Federated is the same as orchestrated? Because you use
Yes.
both words on the slide. It's the same for you?
It's the same. We started to use federator, but now we are in the transition to use more orchestrator to showcase that this has to be an independent organization, not related, yeah, and trusted at the same time.
You present us also the slide before, all these business opportunities with the federator, but are there also opportunities just between the provider and the consumers?
Yes, these are the opportunities that we illustrated in the different use cases. Yeah, in the use cases we say, okay, this happens between a data provider. For example, somebody provides the CO2 consumption of shipping some materials from place A to place B, yeah, and somebody uses them. This is purely between the provider and the consumer. But the business would not happen if not a reliable, trusted organization like an orchestrator is in the middle. And this is why we have the business opportunity for an orchestrator. And this is why we are talking about two different types of business modeling, yeah, on the business level and on the orchestration level.
Thank you very much. First, very clear, very interesting. You tell us that you have telecom companies, software company, they are interested, and I suppose they want to build some multi-sided business model. Could you just explain us which business model? Who is paying for it? What are the gains? What could be a real business case?
Yes.
I am not speaking about your business case.
Yes.
I understand what sort of it, but
yeah.
Which? Just
Yeah, it's a little bit complex due to the fact that we have the European Data Governance Act. And I come back to the answer of your question. According to the European Data Governance Act, an orchestrator in the middle of the business, a federator, yeah, cannot make business with the data he is orchestrating or federating. So what we really do, we put a for-profit entity under this non-profit entity. And this for-profit entity is allowed to use the data to provide services. So a telecom operator, for example, is interested where in my manufacturing environment is the need to handle, to move big volume of data, because the telecom provider wants to sell 5G functionality to the customer, which is a manufacturing SME. Yeah, so this is one example why telecom providers could be interested in the complexity of data that occur during a manufacturing process.
I don't see why it's so complicated to sell 5G.
Yeah, because SMEs are not keen to go from cloud to edge environment. Yeah, and don't see the need to go to 5G data communication. This is still, the telecom providers are doing the business at the moment with the big ones,
Yeah.
but not with the very small ones. And this is an added value for the telecom provider.
Yeah, but as far as I know, it's a sector I know very well. They are so expensive that no SMEs will never buy a thing like that.
Yeah, but then it comes again to data sharing, and then we create again value. So I see the business opportunity, and I see the opportunity for the telecom providers to access data which are of real use in a manufacturing environment. This is the knowledge which does not exist. Yeah.
It's strange because it seems to be a marketing issue, and
Yeah.
they solve a marketing issue by
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
we have some concrete proof, because what we are looking for is some proof of
Yeah.
One answer to that, which is coming from Germany, which is that, as you know very well, Joël, in Germany, several manufacturers have decided to have 5G licenses.
Yeah,
Yes.
I know.
Because they were not willing to pay big fortune
Yes.
to telecom operators who were adding no value.
Mhm.
Okay? And in France,
Yeah.
except for airport, and you know the story very well, no one
Yeah.
has been deciding to go for a license. So I guess this is an element to document the reason why you will ask for a 5G license if you are a manufacturer. I would say
Yeah.
this is an example.
Yes, but
And there's more.
you don't need
The whole story, I agree.
Yeah.
sorry to have a wording like that, usine à gaz,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gas factory.
a gas factory.
Maybe we need to listen to Pontus X before we open
Yes.
the discussion. Otherwise, we will be missing part of it.
Okay,
Yes,
let's change.
very happy to do so. And you talked about trusted infrastructure, which is the baseline to create value. And here Pontus X comes into play. Let me quickly move on to my presentation. Whoopsie. Yes, so I already introduced myself. We as Delta DAO have developed the Pontus X ecosystem, but very important, we are not the only orchestrator of the Pontus X ecosystem. There are multiple of them. I will also explain why this is the case. And I think we are, as data space technology provider, and Pontus X as a data space technology framework is quite unique in the Gaia-X space, because we have thought about business modeling and about value creation from the very beginning. I think there is currently no ecosystem available which has a monetization layer from the beginning as part of their data space, and we believe that this is a really prerequisite to have a sustainable ecosystem. So this is also the reason why this was one of the first parts we have implemented. So let me maybe quickly start with what Pontus X actually is and where the difference is to maybe other kinds of data collaboration platforms. And for this, we have to look at the start. So currently, or the most traditional way how data is being exchanged is through data platforms. Means there is one data platform provider who dictates the rules, who defines the policies of the platform, and then participants can join this platform and can start exchanging data. But the main issue here is that after reaching a certain size of the platform, so there comes a network effect into play, it's really difficult to leave this platform afterwards. Means that a lock-in effect is created, and it's really expensive to move on to another platform, and this can be abused by the data platform provider. He can raise prices, he can start changing policies, and this is something a lot of participants do not want. Additionally, this is a centralized platform, so also data sovereignty cannot be guaranteed. Because of this, we in Europe decided to move on to another model called data spaces, where basically the participants together start defining a governance framework, start defining rules and policies, and after defining these policies, they choose a data space operator who implements the technology also decided by the participants, and on this data space platform then collaboration and data exchange can take place while still having a democratic process who defining the governance in this data space. Here still there is the issue that this data space platform and the data space operator are still pretty centralized. So we have the issue of single points of failures, there can be data breaches, there can be data outages, and because of this we want to move on in Europe to a model we see on the right side, the data ecosystem, which is also propagated by Gaia-X. The big difference here is we still have a lot of participants who together designed the governance framework, but also the technology, the infrastructure itself is federated, is decentralized, and not all participants need to control part of this infrastructure, but the main idea is that it is several participants together are operating the infrastructure together, so we have a federated infrastructure which is much more resilient and which does not have the single points of failures mentioned before. So the specifications for this were defined by Gaia-X, and we as Delta DAO have implemented the specifications and created Pontus X. So here you can see on this slide that we already have 19 operators. We are one of them, but there are many more, which are together providing the decentralized infrastructure for many initiatives and projects you see on the right side. One of them is EuProGigant, a Gaia-X lighthouse. There are more Gaia-X lighthouses, Accurate and Gaia-X for Future Mobility in Cooperance. You can also see here at the Gaia-X Summit. And the big unique selling point and difference to other X ecosystems we see in Gaia-X, that they are, because it's based on the same decentralized infrastructure, are all interoperable with each other. So there is a much bigger market, data can be exchanged across domains, and collaboration can happen between, for example, manufacturing and energy, where there are a lot of synergies, and also, of course, with other domains. To look at the basic economics of Pontus X, we have to look at the participants, which are part of the ecosystem. So the orchestrators and operators, which provide the base services needed for data exchange, for example, a connector, a federated catalog, I already mentioned. They also have a business model by gaining profits through transaction fees in the ecosystem, but there are, of course, many more. So we have data providers, there are software providers, which is also pretty unique in Pontus X. So we do not only talk about data exchange, but actually about data orchestration, where software and data can be combined. For this, you need also compute environments where the computation can take place. So also compute service providers are part of the ecosystem. And of course, really important, we need trust. So there are identity and identity validation providers like the Gaia-X digital clearing houses, like trust service providers like T-Systems, which also have their own business models in Pontus X. And of course, someone has to consume all the services provided. So of course, there are also consumers which are willing to pay for such services. Important when we talk about economics and value creation is that the actually value creation is happening on the application plane. So Wolfgang explained this, the use cases in the different initiatives where actually then cost savings can occur or some other kind of use cases can be published. After consumption, the real value is being created. So Pontus X is an enabler. The base services I will just show to you on the next slide are the actual enablers for value creations and the service offerings which are published, but the real value happens after consumption. So talking about value creation, there are several types which enable this kind of value creation. So the traditional way, which a lot of ecosystems provide, is data transfer. Means a provider wants to offer raw data, which is valuable. Of course, there are some kinds of policies you can define for this kind of service. And after these policies are enforced, so the data sovereignty is guaranteed, then a download or a data transfer can happen. Additionally, there is also the same principle for software transfers. Means a software provider can offer its software in the ecosystem. This software can be downloaded and then executed locally on the consumer side. Now it's getting interesting because this is quite unique in Pontus X. I already mentioned this. Data and software can be combined. So new data products can be actually natively created in Pontus X. For this, you need also a compute environment. So we have a data access mechanism as an additional feature called compute to data, where data and software can be downloaded into. The computation and orchestration can take place, and a new data product is provided and created afterwards. This can be directly consumed by a consumer, but can also be, again, published in the ecosystem. And for this, maybe a pretty simple example is training of an AI algorithm. So one data provider has valuable data for training. Another AI startup can provide some kind of algorithm model for training it. And afterwards, the trained model can be published in Pontus X again. And last service type mentioned here is also general service contracting. Here, software as a service is interesting. An external cloud platform can be published in Pontus X. This can be subscribed to, for example. A contract can be created for 2 weeks for a certain price. And this service, after paying and contracting, can then be redirected to. So I already talked about the enablers and the base services provided by the orchestrators. So here we have implemented the Gaia-X specifications and the Gaia-X Federation services. So what is actually needed in Pontus X to publish services? You need some kind of federated catalog where the services can be discovered and consumed afterwards. You need a graphical user interface for this. So there are marketplaces. You need connectors to actually have a direct data exchange between providers and consumers. You need the contracting elements. You need a payment layer, more on that on the next slide, logging, and of course, the Gaia-X Digital Clearinghouse services and identity and trust and the registry. So now we talked a lot about the value created on the consumer side, but how do the service providers profit through the monetization layer? So basically, we enable direct settlements between consumers and providers. The different kind of service types can be monetized, and then a monetization can happen between the consumer to the provider so that the providers are actually receiving value for their services. Now, quickly coming back to the cornerstones of the economics in Pontus X and how this all works together. So main point is that we have fair transaction fees on the pay-per-use level, means every service can be monetized and transactions can be taken for this, also for the transactions of the operators themselves. So there are no free riders in this ecosystem. We also are offering a subscription model for software as a service components, if wished. And really important and also different to a lot of other ecosystems, there is no ring fencing in Pontus X. So this is an open ecosystem. Everyone can join as long as he adheres to the governance framework, which is the Gaia-X operating model. So through this, we have free competition between a lot of service providers and a big and fairer market through demand and supply and price finding. And what we see a lot in Pontus X now is that a lot of the, initiatives, for example, EuProGigant, but also others, are forming a consortia together to share the use case cost for the initial implementation and then can be rewarded through the monetization layer in the long run to cover these costs and then, of course, have a sustainable ecosystem in the long run. I want to give you a quick outlook where we see Pontus X in the future. And here I want to highlight one really important feature which creates a lot of efficiency. And these are smart contracts. Smart contracts enable a lot of automation, so we can enable automated access controls, automated contracting based on policies, instant settlement and microtransactions between different consumers and providers, and automated value distribution in the example for where new data products are created, for example, and the data is provided by one participant and the software by another, and the computer environment maybe by a third party. The value afterwards is distributed based on the prices set by these service providers. And in the long run, this is for us a logical prerequisite for a scalable machine economy, because we anticipate that there will be 1 million transactions daily, a lot of machines will communicate with each other, and this just won't work without automation and smart contracts. So here we have a very good feature to cover this issue which other ecosystems are facing. Talking about validation, our test and staging environments were successful. So we have over 2 million transactions over the last 3 years. Also mentioning that Pontus X is completely self-financed, so we do not have any kind of investor there. So we had at least some kind of success with Pontus X because it worked over the last years. But now we have to prove this, of course, in a production environment. So we already started to create use cases with partners in production environment as an MVP, and we'll continue here. So stay tuned for our updates in the next month. I think that's all for now. Thank you very much, and feel free to ask any questions.